So today I decided to put rear shocks in my Z4 coupe. It's been a little bouncy driving. I really don't like the way it feels. So I'm going to upgrade the shocks to Bilstein B6s. And then I'm also going to add these Powerflex polyurethane shock mounts into the car. On top of the mounts, I'm going to add my own stiffener plates that I use. They call them reinforcement plates. Basically keep those shock mounts a little bit more rigid, since for the most part, if you got polyurethane, you're not going to see that much play. Now I put a camera on my old shocks so you can actually see how they move going over some speed bumps and some other things, you know, like turns, sharp turns, little jumps in the road, and you can see how those rubber mounts move in the car. And I did the same thing driving with the polyurethane mounts, and you can see that they really don't move that much at all. So I strongly suggest that if you're using polyurethane mounts with the billet aluminum plates, that you really should put shock reinforcement plates on there, because you could bend the towers because there really is no give. So I watched a lot of videos on YouTube in regards to rear shock replacement on Z4 Roches and coupes, and I really felt that they weren't detailed enough for you. And so what I'm going to do is give you part numbers, give you everything you need to know about them, and how to actually do it safely. That's most important, is safety first. And let's get to it. So before you can get to the shocks, you have to remove all these panels in the trunk. And it's worth getting one of these fastener kits. They come with all these little neat little plastic tools for prying out panels. This little metal one. All sorts of variety of different types of nylon fasteners, hardware. Let's get this out here. These are like $20 on Amazon. I got some links. Look at this. There's a bunch of different ones. More. It's crazy. $20. It's worth having these in the shop if you're going to start removing plastic panels. Most of these videos that I've seen have everybody just yanking panels off the car with their hands, and it's really not the right way to do it, because you're going to inevitably break a clip or something on the panel. So $20, it's well worth it. It's a no-brainer. So here's the inside of my trunk. You can see you got side surround panels here, a rear panel over here, more surround panels on the side. All of this stuff has to be removed. By the way, this is my spare tire. It's an Airman kit for inflating and repairing flats. So I don't have any run flats in the car. This is what I use for a spare tire. This just lifts right out. Exposes the battery. So with the bottom panel removed, we're going to work on the rear panel over here. Take these 4 screws out, and we're going to work on the lens covers for either side. This is the driver side one. This one over here is the passenger side lens cover. You have these little clips here. They just rotate, they come out, but they go underneath this rear panel. So actually, if you're changing your lights, by the way, it's very simple to just pull this out and kind of bend it back underneath this panel. You don't have to take the rear panel out, but it's a good idea to take everything out so you're not bending and stretching anything. So again, 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll take that out. So one thing, I don't really like using electric guns on these screws because they could strip. This is the last of the 4 screws I'm taking out. Now what I do is I release the lens covers on both sides by just turning these 90 degrees. So once all the screws are out, everything will just kind of pop out at once. Just kind of lift this out of the way. There's your lens covers. the other lens cover. And the rear panel. So in that kit, there's several different types of shapes of these little plastic tools. This tool I'm going to use to get in here and pull these clip up. There's a clip that comes up this way, a clip that goes out this way, and 3 other pop-out clips about here. Like 1, 2, and 3, I believe. So I'm going to get in here and try to get that other clip lifted up. Pull this one out. Now, these 2 other clips that are up over here, they're kind of made with those pieces. You can kind of see them in here as you pull out. I really don't want to break this clip. I'm very careful to remove it. That's your upper surround out. So let's look at these panels and see what we have here. You got this one clip in the corner. You see how it's shaped? That's where you kind of have to lift up on it. You got these 2 other little clips over here that come out, so you can always change them if you need to. Right? It's 2 of those. These didn't break. Sometimes they're going to break. That's why it's important to have that kit. This little part of the mold that you might have to stretch these back out again. And then over here, this end piece that just snaps in over here. The other stuff goes underneath the weather stripping of the car. So the weather stripping holds it in place. So underneath this panel is a torque screw that holds it in place. And we have to lift this panel up to get it out of the way. And you can get this tool in here again and pry it up. So I've got here a number 15 Torx bit, and I'm going to just unscrew that screw that holds this panel in place here. You spend more time taking off the trim in this car than the actual shocks. I'm putting a downward pressure on this panel. See, there's a talk about these metal clips. You want to make sure you don't lose them. You're going to do this on both sides, and then we'll take out this panel. So we've got all the trim removed all the way up until the top over here. Next is to take out these panels on both sides. On this panel, you're going to have to remove the light. So we're going to take off the driver's side panel now. I have lifted up the carpet around it to expose the bottom. You can just see it's just here like this. right in the back, right near the one of the tail lights, is a clip. And there's another clip up here, right above the light. So we're going to remove them with this tool. I'm going to stick this underneath here. Pry out that clip. These are one of those rivet type of clips. See? So this thing hooks in and has to be from the top and has to be pressed down. It's got these little hooks, you see? You want to be careful that you don't break these ends off these panels. So these clips here are actually behind the panel, and they go in like this. And they hold it in place, and you kind of got to get your hand behind there and lift these up to pop it out. All right, you can also kind of fish it out, but be very careful you don't lose these clips. So here we got this foam insulation that obviously keeps the road noise out of the car. Just lift this up and flip it over, and that exposes the shock mount and the two flange nuts we need to remove. We repeat this process on the other side, and then the shock towels will be exposed, and then we could jack up the car and remove the shocks. All right, so when it comes to jacking up your car, and you're going to be using a jack, a lot of you guys aren't going to have a lift, and I like to do my videos for everybody. I mean, I have access to lifts and everything, but this, I like to show people how to do things if you don't have lifts and certain tools, right? So anyway, these are your jack mounts that are on your car, or jacking pads. A lot of times over the years they get busted up from people putting floor jacks underneath them without using the proper pad. You can get these pads, and you can get replacement mounts for your BMW or Mini Cooper or whatever on Amazon. Links below on the Amazon page. But what I like doing is using these pads because they fit inside the mount like this, and then you put your hydraulic jack underneath it. So you don't damage it, it doesn't slip off of it. And again, it's a safer way of doing it. And it saves these. They don't get ruined. So by putting this on here like that, it makes it a lot easier. In fact, you can put them on certain jack stands that have round bases on them as well, and lower the car and rest them on it with that. So this little thing that I have, I keep all 4 of these in stock. I keep extras of these in stock. Sometimes they'll fall off your car while you're driving, and you go underneath the car and they're not there anymore. So they're easy to put in, by the way, because you have this pin that you get, and you put this up into the car and then simply push this pin through it, and it spreads the back end and holds it in place. So it's a simple installation. So if your old ones are kind of chewed up or half broken, just remove them and replace them and put some new ones in. It's cheap enough, and it's good extra insurance that you're going to be jacking the car up correctly. So I got the jack underneath the car. I put the jack pad on the lift point. I just let it catch with my fingers first. It'll drop down once it's in there. That's good. See where we got it? Let it catch. So make sure you have the front wheels chopped with a block of wood or something, an old ramp, whatever you want to use, because the rear wheel is going to be off the ground. All right, tires obviously off. Everybody knows how to take a tire off, I hope. What we're going to do now is, notice how I have the jack stand pointing in the same angle that the lower control arm is at, all right? And all I want to do is lower the car a little bit on the control arm to compress the assembly. This way I can kind of keep these mounts stuffed into the chassis of the car without having it drop down when I take the bolts off of it. See, by keeping some pressure on the shock underneath, we keep the whole assembly stuffed up into the chassis, so we don't have to worry about things falling out. I really don't like having parts dropping off cars if at all possible. So this is an 18mm headed bolt, and if your car is got a lot of rust on it, you may want to spray some penetrating oil into the threads back over here. In my video's description, I'm going to have the part numbers of all these bolts, okay? So that you can put new hardware on it if you like. Okay, so let's look at the shock absorber I pulled out of the car. The beauty about having the shock absorber mount sealed from the outside is that usually these threads are not going to get corroded, all right? They look really nice, and usually you'll have no problem getting them off. I have some tools that I have for doing shocks and struts. These are socket sets for certain types of struts and sockets, but some of them don't fit these types of shock absorber arrangements. In fact, on the Bilsteins, the nuts are bigger. So typically, they have these tools that you can, let's find the right one here. This is the 6mm one. Normally this would go on, this would slide over this, and you'd be able to kind of hold one and turn the other using wrenches or a torque wrench, whatever you want to do. The problem is, most of the BMW stuff, these tools don't fit. This one doesn't fit, but you could use this one if you'd like. Okay, so you can use it and hold it with a wrench with this one, and then use another wrench to turn it and get it loose. So let's do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you when I put together the Bilstein, because this doesn't fit on the Bilstein either. I'm going to just use an adjustable wrench and a crowfoot on a torque wrench to show you how I do it that way. So I've taken off the gasket. You can reuse these if they're good, but new ones are fairly cheap. So this one is a 5/8 wrench. Fits on this really nice. And I've got the shock tool with the 6mm end on it. And again, if you don't have it, you can just simply use a vice grip. But these aren't even on tight. Okay, it's quite funny. It's pretty loose. So let's see what you got here. You got the nut, you got the upper washer. Notice it's rubber backed. Okay, you have the shock mount. You have the lower cup, which is usually stuck to the bumper. That comes off. The bumper comes off. There's also a little washer that goes on underneath this, like this. Now I'll give you all the part numbers in the description of the video of all these pieces if you're just replacing a stock set. When you're replacing some aftermarket shocks, they're not going to come with this little square edge on it, which acts like a washer. So usually the Bilsteins do have a washer that goes on in place of this, all right? This is pretty well shot, the shock. I could just put it down with my fingers like this. It's really in bad shape. So it is what it is, but hey, it's 14 years old. So now I'm even going to replace these bumpers. They're old, they're not bad, but sometimes you'll see people replacing these and putting the old ones back on the car and they're all corroded, they've got cracks in them. I don't like doing that. This stuff is relatively cheap. There's a lot of labor to take this whole back of the car apart just to get at the shock. You might as well put all new hardware and not use all the rusty stuff over. It's cheap enough, it's a few dollars a piece. Okay, so here's the B6 Bilstein shock for the Z4 coupe. And noticing right off the bat, you've got a smaller piston than the factory piston has, which means that this bumper, which has a bigger hole in it, isn't going to fit properly. When I look at the instruction sheets for the shock, they supply a washer to compensate for the built-in washer that's on the factory shock, and they also supply an adapter, which is Z. The adapter was not included with the shock. Looked in the bag, looked in both shocks, it's not there. So I hate when this happens because you wait so long for something to come in and then you're worrying about what you're going to do. The other thing is too that the plastic sleeve that went over the shock over here doesn't fit here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this thing on here like this. Now I don't want it to flop around like this, but what I had some seals that I use in these shift lever seals from some automatic transmissions, all right? And they actually fit perfectly in the bumper and in the piston. So I'm going to grease the seals just lightly here and push them in. like this. They actually fit beautiful in the bumper. That's going to have to do. And I actually think this is kind of better. It's kind of a happy accident, because what's going to happen here is that these seals are going to seal a hell of a lot better than the bumpers the way it was. So we're going to just slide that down. That's pretty cool. I don't know if you can see, look at that fit. Nice. Next step is to put the shock mount washer. There's a on here. Still fits on the way it's supposed to go, like that. Then the lower shock mount cup, that goes on like this. This is going to go against this piece over here. This is going to go against right here. You can see the taper fits inside this, right? And then we're going to start building the mount around it. So I'm using the Powerflex mounts. They work really well. I like them. And Powerflex has kind of weird instructions. I don't really like their methodology. I would rather put in both discs first. The discs you want to put in where they're facing, this little lip is facing towards the inside, like this. So they're nice and even. See that? Then they give you some sort of grease, the silicone grease that you can put on the shaft. Like this. And then push that right through. And this goes in like this. Now here's the upper cup washer. This faces rubber side towards the mount. And it just goes on like this. They go on tight. You got to walk them down. There it is. Looks good. And you're going to put on the nut they supply. Now this nut is 11/16. It's not metric. The nut that I took off of the factory shock was 5/8. Now what I use is I use an adjustable wrench to hold on the top and another wrench to tighten it. When I feel it stops, then I'm going to put a torque wrench on it. Got a crow foot on the end of my torque wrench. Just put it in here. Catch it on there. Perfect. Just want to take notice the way this rubber spread out around it. That's the way it is. It's normal for it to be like that, and it looks good. The upper shock washer has a glued-on rubber backing, which probably works to reduce noise or squeaky noises on the stock mounts. But with the polyurethane mounts, I think it's best to just remove it, so because it's going to squash out anyway. So it just removes and take it off. So even though Powerflex gives you these flange nuts that have serrations on the bottom of them, I replaced them with the BMW flange nuts. They fit a lot tighter. So what I'll do is I'll run a little grease on the mount and on the gasket. This way the gasket doesn't stick to it. I really like this setup because everything is inside the car, so to speak, and it won't be subjected to the harsh environments of just salt, mud, dirt, drying out the rubber. And in this case, the polyurethane. And then what I'll do is, once it's in the car, I'm going to use one of my high carbon steel reinforcements plates. And I'll go in like that. So I've greased this bolt so that the threads don't corrode added the washer that comes with the B6 shock. I raised the car up a little bit so it makes it easier to get the new shock in there. Just enough to catch the bolt. So now that that's torqued down, I'm going to lower the car back on the jack stand to bring up the studs into the chassis again. All right, so these are my high carbon steel stiffener plates I made. You can actually get them on my web store if you're interested in them. It's only $20 for a set. High carbon steel, powder coated. All right, so the shocks are installed. I took the car for a ride. It feels fantastic. The combination of those Bilstein B6 shocks coupled to the Powerflex urethane mounts seem to work very well for me. You may find something different. I have to be honest, I was a little worried that the ride would be kind of harsh and stiff, but it's not. All that body roll that was going around is eliminated. And you can see I put a camera inside the trunk with the urethane mounts. They don't move at all. So I don't know if it's really necessary to go with a higher durometer or mount or even aluminum mounts, because these seem to work very well for me. Again, I have a street car, it's a daily driver. This is not a track car for me. That being said, you know, it suits my needs, but you may find something different, okay? Hope you got a lot out of this video. I didn't show you how to put all the panels back, because all you have to do is reverse the procedure that I showed you in the beginning of this video. That's that. Please subscribe to my channel, hit the notify button, and please share my videos if you can. That would mean a lot to me. I'm trying to reach 100,000 subscribers this year, and I feel like I can do it with the help of you guys, okay? Buy Me a Coffee funds, if you can, contribute to Buy Me a Coffee. What that does is help me get gear, fix gear, and anything that I need to create these videos, including the purchase of transmission cores for future videos, is what those funds are used for. So again, thank you everyone. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.